Hello, and welcome to another edition of Coffee Talk with immigration attorney Brian D. Lerner. In this particular episode, it's going to go into my series on Trump's executive orders so that you can see a breakdown of what the executive order is, essentially what it's doing, what the likely fights will be, and more about the issues that are occurring in each particular one. Now, the first one that I'd like to discuss, which in actuality was the last executive order issued, is the one where the actual title of it is not in actuality the what it's doing. It says that it's entitled "Protecting the Nation from Foreign Terrorists' Entry into the United States." Now, keep in mind that there has not been a terrorist situation like 2001 um, for all of these years. Okay. Keep in mind also that there is also a very detailed process that goes forward in order to vet, to use Trump's word, and to determine if the particular person is a threat to the United States, if the particular person is associated with terrorists, has a background. There's all kinds of stuff that currently and already has occurred after 2001. So the bottom line here is a lot of what Trump's executive order does here, and multiple times in the executive order it says the Secretary of State and DHS will issue a report on how to properly vet and what to look for and so forth in these people. Basically ignores all of the thousands of hours of work that has already been done in order to vet these people before coming into the US. So, before we get into some of the issues in regards to this particular executive order, just keep in mind a couple things. First, just because it is an executive order signed by the president does not automatically make it law. Okay. There are checks and balances in the United States, which essentially allows one branch from overstepping its legal bounds. And the checks and balances is exactly what's occurring right now. This executive order was issued approximately 2.5 days ago. Since that time, there has been multiple lawsuits which have been filed against the executive order. There have been multiple orders from judges all over the United States, essentially granting the people who filed these lawsuits to be able to enter the United States. And there's going to be a lot more lawsuits that are going to be filed that will go to the district courts in the jurisdiction upon which it happens. There will probably be class action lawsuits, and ultimately, there will most likely be judges that may issue not just rulings that the particular individual can come in, but striking down different parts of the particular case or the particular executive order in which to determine which parts are valid and which aren't. Now, just to let you know, the issuance of executive orders and going to court is not just something that has happened with Trump. In fact, last year, when former President Obama issued an executive order regarding DAPA and other matters, injunctions were issued. It went to the appellate courts. It went up to the Supreme Court of the United States, and ultimately it was determined that certain parts of the executive order were determined to exceed the president's authority. So, same thing can happen. Obviously, just because Trump has done it, doesn't make any difference. If it does exceed the power of an executive order, that part will be stricken. There's also lots of different items which are more than just exceeding the power available in executive order. For example, if parts are found to be unconstitutional, they will be stricken from the executive order. If they're found to be vague and ambiguous, they will be found to be stricken from the executive order. And there's a variety of other legal challenges that will be made in order to proceed forward. So keep heart. Just because an executive order comes down does not mean it's the end of the story. More relevant, it's actually the beginning of the story, and we are going to see democracy at work here. We're going to see the the separation of powers and the balances and the checks and so forth. We're going to see that one person cannot completely change the policy of the United States and, in essence, issue what is called something else, but in what in essence is really a Muslim ban from coming into the United States. As has been done in the past, each person needs to be properly vetted. But when you take an entire race of people and say none of them can come in, um, the reality is that's just pure racism and bigotry. And it is hopeful that the court cases will go forward and will show that we in the United States are not a bigoted country, we are not a racist country, and that we are fair and open minded to the people who come in with the proper vetting and the proper procedures in which to make them be able to enter the United States in a safe and coherent manner. So this particular executive order essentially says cap refugee. The first thing, it caps refugee resettlement numbers to 50,000. So what that does is that lowers it to a level that has not been seen in over 10 years. So you just think about what's happening. You have somebody that qualifies as a refugee, meaning that they are suffering persecution in their home country, meaning that they and their family are being persecuted on one of 5 different grounds allowed by U.S. law to come in. And now, because of the cap, many of those people and families who are suffering persecution will not be able to come in. It then, of course, suspends immigrant and non-immigrant entry for people from what it says is predominantly Muslim countries, but it does list several countries of which this applies to: Iraq, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen. So the shocking part about this is, even if somebody has been here in the United States for years and has gone through all of the vetting process already and has received their green card and their lawful permanent resident already, if they happened to be outside the United States, they are not going to be allowed in. Now, I've received emails and calls from people, for example, who say, I've been a lawful permanent resident for 30 years and I was on vacation when this order came down and I have medical problems that I need to see my doctor in the United States. Will I have a problem coming back? So it turns out that DHS has essentially issued a memorandum saying that if someone has a green card, it is in the national interest to allow them in. So, essentially, without going through any court battle on that issue, DHS is now allowing, unless there's something that pops up, they're allowing anyone who has a green card to be able to return to the U.S. as they're claiming and stating it's in the national interest. So we'll see what happens with that. But it's interesting to me that you have the president of the United States specifically say that from these countries that immigrants are not going to be allowed back in, and immigrants are those people who have lawful permanent residency. And then you have an agency under the president who essentially says that immigrants are a national interest to the United States and allows them to come in. I think that should tell you something in regards to the order. Now, the the other issues that are going to come up is the order itself says that it's not going to admit people who engage in acts of bigotry or hatred, or other forms of violence against women or persecution of those who practice religions different from their own. Um, or who would oppress Americans for any race, gender, or sexual orientation. And it's interesting that it says that because the result of the order, the executive order itself, is to do exactly that. Okay, is to prohibit people from coming into the country who have different views than us. And I'm not saying anything about not properly vetting the people like has been done for many years from coming into the United States. So it goes on to say that there needs to be in place a way of seeing if there are fraudulent answers and malicious intent of the people. There needs to be mechanisms to determine if there's a likelihood that they'll be a contributing member of society, and that they have an ability to make contributions to the national interest. Well, a few things on that. There are specific visas, for example, that allow the national interest of that particular person coming in to be applied for. To take it to a level where every non-immigrant and every immigrant that comes into the United States must show it's in the national interest of the United States essentially means you are denying the vast majority of people the right to ever come in. What if they want to go vacation? Do you know how many people come here on B2 visitor visas to go see Disneyland, to go see the national parks, to go visit the United States? I mean, is it in the national interest of the United States to allow people to come and visit? And there's all kinds of visas. There's F1 student visas, O1 extraordinary ability aliens, H-1B for people who have degrees working. There's the P visas for groups and entertainers. There's a wide variety of different kinds of visas, and to hold it all out and to say that they must all show that it's in the national interest of the United States to let them in is essentially putting a bar that is so high that it essentially is rendering invalid a wide variety of visas that currently exist. I mean, the bottom line, I think it's in the national interest of the United States to not be bigoted and to allow people who have been properly vetted and who have met the necessary security interests to apply for all the different types of visas we have if that's approved to come in. There's investment visas, and as well there's all different kinds of visas, and to allow them to come in. So the bottom line is this particular executive order does seem to be a thinly veiled order which creates a Muslim ban. There's a reason uh, there are essentially protests not just all over the U.S. but all over the world because of this. It's just not. We are not the type of people that exclude all races of people in that manner. Um, you know, so I guess we're going to wait and see. But there are lots and lots of lawsuits already been filed, a ton more that are coming down the pipeline, and so forth. So if you happen to be a person who does need such a consultation and see what's happening, give me a call, let you know what can be done. I'm going to do the other videos today on the other executive orders, and we'll see what happens. Okay, more in the coming videos.